Welcome everybody to the Artisan School, where we talk about Pianocraft. 3 times a week we do live trainings like this where we get to just break things and try to fix them. Today we're going to be talking about a treble string replacement, and I'm going to be showing you kind of my method. I didn't come up with this method, but this is the method that I seem to gravitate towards, and that is the in-piano coiling versus the coiler, the insta-coiler. And so there's pros to and cons to each. And I'm going to go over that and just kind of show you why I do what I do versus, and again, it might not be the best route for everybody. The big con for doing this technique is potentially loosening up the tuning pin too much. So what I'm going to be doing today is, as I break the string, we're going to go ahead and loosen the tuning pin upwards and then make a becket, put on a new string, and then wind it back. The con for doing this method is that you're potentially loosening up the torque of that tuning pin. The pro to doing this is I find it to be kind of easier for me personally, and I get to just do it all in one spot. Yeah, I don't know. I just have always done it this way. I come from a restoration background where that's how we would restring a piano, is this way. And so it just has always been something that that I do this way. And let's get started first off by just breaking the string, which I don't know. Even in doing these demos, I don't like doing, but we're going to do it anyways. And this is always fun because you get to see just how much you're able to pull a string up as far as past pitch. Let's do this one. Can you guys hear that? Here we go. Jeez. Here we go again.
Yay!
Awesome. Every time. It's like that scene in Elf when he's like kind of doing the Charlie in the box or whatever you want to call it. It pops up every time. I hate it. I hate breaking strings. Strings break, and sometimes there's nothing you can do about it. Sometimes you're on the wrong tuning pin and you break a string. Sometimes your technique, sometimes it's just time for that string to go off to what is it? What they say, animals, you go to the farm. The strings go to the farm and live their life. In this case, we just broke a string, and it's a treble string. And luckily, I have my Supply 88 stringing kit, which, not a sponsor, just a big fan. I've had everything under the sun over the years as far as my string storage. And I have to say that hands down, if you don't have one of these, give these a look. They're by Supply 88, and these are, I think they call them, Michael, don't they call these like wheels? Tire wheels?
Tire wheels, I think is how they market them.
And they look like that. And there's several things that are genius about these. And again,
yeah, mine's the first gen.
Yeah, I special ordered Artisan black.
I have those.
The cool thing about these, maybe I'll back up. Historically, these strings have come in a little stupid tin. And that tin will have just one little hole that the string is popping out of. And God be with you if you accidentally lose that string inside the tin, because you are not getting that out without unhooking the tin and then trying to pull it out. And the genius of these is this design. And so they've made it so that these strings will stop, so that it won't just continually unwind. It'll just stop, and then and they're light, they're easy to wind up. It's just chef's kiss, Mark and Dawn's chef's kiss. It's lightweight, but one of the biggest things that I love about this is literally this feature right here. And maybe you guys do this or not, but it's got the tool storage for all of your stringing tools. So everything from my calipers, my little, I got a little clamp to clamp the string. Again, I got my calipers right here. By the way, if you're watching, just kind of take an inventory of this is some of the stuff you're going to need. I have like a little mini tuning lever in here just to make things easier for me. Obviously, I need my, whoa, I don't have it in there. I have these guys to cut wires, but I need to get my needle nose pliers. I got my string lifter, and I use this a lot for the most part. I'm kind of using just a small flathead screwdriver to get that excess string out. But before I get started, I didn't realize how greasy my hands are until people are like, hey, what's that on the piano? I'm like, oh yeah, I touched the piano, and I guess my hands are greasier than I realized. So whether it's a rubber glove or a kind of a work glove, which I actually really do recommend those. Yes, Michael. The work gloves are way better. This makes me feel like I'm gonna go do surgery, which is fun, you know. But glove up, not only for your protection, but also just so that you're not corroding the strings with your greasy fingers if you're like me. Questions so far about anything that I've talked about and breaking the string?
I've got a question, David.
Yeah.
I know if I'm on the wrong tuning pin and I break a string, like obviously I'm gonna just fix that for the customer and everything. But if you're dealing with a really old piano that's 150 cents low and you give them a little spiel, sometimes strings break. What is kind of your protocol or your script that you tell them to warn them, and then say it does happen, you break a string, how do you go back to the customer? What do you say?
Yeah, great question. And this is the kind of stuff that we go over. And my script is, if it's a piano that's that old where I'm like, there's a possibility that something might break, I just bring them in right away. Say, Mrs. Smith, when was the last time it was tuned? Well, it's been about 20 years. I'm like, okay, that's kind of what I was thinking because we're about this far out of tune. So my goal today is to get it up as close to pitch without breaking strings. Now, strings may break, and if that starts to happen, we're going to need to reevaluate because that can get expensive to start replacing these strings. So I've moved it from the expectation being a perfectly tuned piano by the time I'm done to no, my goal is to bring it get it up to pitch and not break any and not have any strings break. Then we're going to set up a follow-up appointment in the next 3 weeks to a month to do another layer of tunings. Just so you know, most of the times if strings are going to break, it's going to be in this first pass. At least is what I found. And so that it's changing the narrative, Skylar, of what the expectation is from the get-go. And the times I've run into problems and then I'm like, I got this. It's 100 cents flat. I'm not going to break any strings, and pop, pop, pop. And then they come in like, great, you tuned my piano. It's great. When are you going to fix those for free? And I'm like, oh. And then I was just, you know what? I'll just do it because shame on me. I should have brought the customer in the beginning. Some people are different. Jacob, what do you do? I'm gonna go get my needle nose.
So I always have the hard rule: if 3 strings break, then I am stopping right there or reevaluating. But going back to what you were asking, Skylar, yeah, if there's rust, if there's a lot of corrosion, if there's a lot of evidence that it's going to break, it's really flat, I will bring them right in right away and warn them about it. This kind of thing, in my experience, strings break. I'm going to do my best to not do that, but it is just the way it is. And usually it's something that it's basically has already happened. We're trying to get it to pitch. So because it's really flat, it's not showing, but you can think of it that the string is already broken in a way. So it's kind of prepping them right away and going from there. But can I also say, in the English, there's this thing of that we take a lot of blame for things happening, right? We'll say that I broke the string, and I don't know. In Spanish, it's more like it broke. And that's kind of how you had to think about it. It is just, it's going to happen. And as long as you're not being negligent or just like you were saying, like if you're on the wrong pin and you break it, then yeah, then take the hit. But if you're not, if you're doing your job and it breaks, then it broke.
Yeah. Another question around that topic is, do you have like if it's this flat, I'm going to do it in 2 passes? Because I did one a week or 2 ago that was about 100 cents flat, was the worst of them. Most of them were around 50. And I just pitch raised it up to pitch. And I didn't break any strings. No strings broke, and it was fine. And but I did warn them before, just because I didn't know, and I was just like, just in case, like I'm going to do everything I can, but if it breaks, like that'll be additional cost. But I didn't know if it's like so flat, you're like, I'm not going to pull it up any higher than 50 cents flat of true pitch or whatever. Do you have any rules like that or guidelines?
You want to take that one, David?
Yeah, I would say that with us here at Artisan, we use this language, and I found that this is the easiest for people to understand. When it's that far out of tune, we say, Mrs. Smith, can you come in here and we're going to talk about your piano? Okay, you told me it's been about 20 years since it was tuned. I need you to imagine that this is a black wall and we need to paint it white. Mm-hmm. And so to do that properly, we can't do that in one coat. We're going to need to have multiple coats to do that. And that's where we're at. So today I'm going to try to get it up to pitch as close as possible. I might do another pass, but then we're going to need to have at least one, maybe several other coats, me coming back to do this. And that has been, out of 25 years, that's about the best one that I've been able to figure out that lands with the customer.
I like that.
And awesome. So then it's up to you to decide how far out that is. Coburn, I think you're on here right now too. And I don't know what your protocol is. If like, hey, if it's 100 cents flat, are you bringing it up to pitch? Typically I am, because I don't know, maybe I'm just too daring. Maybe it's not a good idea. Or Jacob.
Coburn. Well, for me, I like to bring it. I like to bring it to pitch, not in pitch raise. I'm not doing a pitch raise that first time. I'm gonna bring it up to pitch. It's gonna fall flat. Usually at 100, it's gonna be anywhere from like 40 to 50 again. Then I'll do it on pitch raise mode, and then I can go a little bit farther from there. But if I'm using a pitch raise, it's going to multiply how far flat it is, and go farther than I want it to be. And you can, in your software, you can stop it, but I like to just I don't trust it. I guess I don't know. I'll bring it up to pitch first, then I'll do a pitch raise. Yeah.
I think that it's kind of a case by case, and depending on what you feel comfortable with. Sometimes I'm at a piano, Skylar, that I'm like, this is, there's no chance I'm going to be able to bring this up. I'm just going to tell them I'm going to tune it at pitch, see what happens. Michael, have you ever had that yet?
I'm more concerned with how the tuning pins and the strings look. If there's rust, I'm more concerned about pitch raising. If it doesn't have any rust, and even if if the piano's within 30 to 50 years old, I'm not concerned with pulling 80 cents, 100 cents, and doing a full pitch raise. Especially with my discussions that I've had with others at different workshops and stuff, where they don't mind doing a full, pitch raise all the way up to pitch in one pass. Yeah. So, that's kind of given me the confidence to go ahead and do it. And so far, I've not had any problems. And the only strings that I've broken is either one, because I messed up, like you were talking about earlier, either being on the wrong pin or just not paying clear enough attention to how that tuning pin's moving, or the strings are rusted, or there's rust around the tuning pins, and I know that they're susceptible to breaking. And that's the only time that I've had issues.
So in right here, what we're going to be doing, and Jacob kind of discussed this beforehand, you came on, is I'm going to be doing the in the piano trick of replacing the string, where I'm actually just coiling in the piano on the tuning pin itself. And so for doing this, again, You're going to have to decide, you know, what your costs and what you're going to be charging for this, whether you're going to talk to the customer and have, you know, propose replacing the string. Because right here, I just broke a string, but guess what? There's still 2 strings on each of the notes. So the way it broke was I still have 2 out of the 3 strings on these, you know, the 2 notes right here. So do they really want to have that string replaced? Because it is going to stretch. I'm going to have to come back and do a follow-up. Am I going to charge for that? Things get complicated is all I can say. And we used to have this hard and fast rule of just like, okay, we're going to replace the string. It's an extra $25. But then we were like, oh yeah, we'll come by and touch it up. Boom, that just took up in a full appointment slot because I'm heading out to whereversville to just touch up a 5-minute, but that just took a slot for $25. And so you have to be smart about it. What are you going to include? Are you going to mute it off? Are you going to put a wedge in there? You're going to have to decide.
That's validation for me too, I guess, because that's what I felt like too. I had a set price and then always something different changes it. And so now, yeah, I feel the same way. It's like case by case basis.
Yeah. What I do now is I say, hey, the string still sounds pretty good. Both of these don't sound pretty good. I can replace it and mute it off. It's going to be $50 or whatever it is. And when we come back, and I'll try to pre-stretch it as best I can, mute it off. And then when we come back, you know, in about a year or 6 months, we'll touch that up again for right away, tune the piano and touch it up one more time, and it should be okay. That's typically what I do. So at the string, can you guys see this okay? Can you hear this okay?
Yeah, that's good.
Sweet. So the first thing that I do is I like to remove the excess string. And I use this, I like just this tiny little flathead screwdriver. And I'm simply pulling the becket out of the tuning pin. So I'm pulling this up and now, boom, I got that. And so what I usually do is I flip this on the floor for people to step on. No, I don't. Don't do that. Be careful with that. You know, honestly, this is one of the main, as a technician, I'm going to talk and like, I don't know, just do this as I talk, removing the string. But as technicians, our liability insurance is actually fairly minimal, but oddly enough, some of the cases where there have been claims have been for this very thing, where the technician has left a piece of the string in the carpet accidentally, kid comes by and slices themselves, they go to the hospital and that kind of a thing. So there's not a lot of liability for what we do in the customer's home, but that's one. So just be extra careful. So as you can see, I've just removed this excess string from the tuning pin itself. And I'm just gonna go ahead and see if I can just pull, I'm using my needle nose pliers. I'm being careful not to scratch up the plate. And I hate that when I've seen technicians in the past. I go to the piano where there's been some strings replaced and they're just gnarled up the plate. I'm like, bro, as my kids would say, don't. The thing that you need to watch out for is you're gonna have to decide whether you're gonna pull this out your way or snip it to get rid of this excess and pull it out the other way. Be mindful of these dampers. That's what I'm being very careful of, is I got these damper heads right here that I don't want to mess with. I don't want to hurt the felt. I don't want to hurt the wires. And so in this case, I'm actually going to snap this part off. So I've removed this right here, and I'm simply going to pull it towards the bell of the piano, and boom. I've removed that string safely. I haven't hurt myself yet. I swear, all the times I've hurt myself have either been 2 things, maybe 3 things. Voicing, where I stabbed my hand, did that the other day, and when I'm working with strings. So all the more reason to use those work gloves. Jacob, what about you? Is there a third one that you've hurt yourself with?
No, moving. No, I guess I've broken phones many times, but that's moving. I guess. I'll think of another one, I'm sure.
You'll think of another one. I got the wire out. I'm thrilled that I haven't hurt myself yet. I haven't hurt the piano. I haven't put my eye out. By the way, if you have some kind of glasses, safety glasses or just something, Josiah, you're a young guy. Just so you know, there is this reverse ageism that you were going to run into. I'll just be real. And I ran into it because I was 15 when I got started. And I was all of 20 when I started this company, and I looked all of 14. That was for me. And so I actually wore glasses because it at least gave me a couple of years that I looked a little bit older. But as business owners, those are some of the things that, that I've actually run into with other young technicians is you may be qualified, but sometimes the customer will see a younger person and then be like, well, do they really know what to do? Just food for thought. The wire's here, and now I'm going to go ahead and just measure it. I'm one of those lazy techs. I'll be real with you. I just kind of take my calipers and I put it on the string, and I'm like, yep. I tighten it down. I'm like, that's good. And I literally take those those calipers and I just go to the strings and I'm like, yep, that's it. Does anybody else do that? Jacob, do you do that?
That's me. Yeah.
Okay. There's a formula.
I don't want to do the math. I don't want to do the math. I don't want to do it though.
I don't want to do it either. So Skylar, just so you know, these tire rounds come and they have like this little number on them. You see that? And so it's like maybe 12 up to 21 or 22. And there's a formula, and if I remember right, it's like when you dial in the calipers, it may say, I think, is it the number, Michael, you just, let me try it first.
I may not remember right, so I want to see what you say.
It's the number, let's just say it's a 0.5 or whatever. So it's -5 divided by 2.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, so it's
like 0.040.
Yep.
Minus 5,000, so it would be 0.035 divided by 2.
Yeah, this is like exactly. And so that's the formula. And you can do the formula, or you can be like me and Jacob and just tighten it up to it and be like, yep, that's what it is. I find that it measures right at that 15.5 gauge. I'm in. I'm going to do this. I usually use my existing wire as a reference for how much wire I need to pull out. That's just kind of a rule of thumb for me. I get it, more than enough. Because I've done that before. I've gotten to getting to the tuning pin on my second, getting it done, and I'm like 3 inches short. I'm like, what? And then I have to start all over. Okay, so with these guys, snap the wire, and then I make a little bend right here, like a little triangle, just so that I can easily get to that. Can you all see that? So I just kind of put that back in place. Boom, I'm done for the next time. I can easily get to it. So anybody tell me, what's my next thing that I'm gonna do before I start to run this wire? Anybody? I've removed the excess wire from my tuning pins. What's the next thing?
You have to set your pin height or
you gotta back
dealing
out
with the pin.
Boom, yes, you gotta back it out. So with this technique, what I do is I do 6 half turns, which equals 3 full turns. That's what I found works for me. Jacob, what are your thoughts?
That's what I do.
So
3 full turns or whatever equals 3 full turns.
Yep.
And then I'll tap it in afterwards.
So I'm just loosening this up. 3, 4.
Which is interesting because I'm not doing it in the piano. So I'll tap it in afterwards. But 3 is still I like that height for later.
Yeah, I do too.
Is that because you want to help set a good set of coils? So in case you have that extra height and
you're talking to me? Yeah, Jacob. Yeah. Okay, so when I'm done, I'm making sure that the orientation of that hole inside that pin for that becket is going, what'd you say, horizontal to me? So horizontal to this so that it's, from left to right, not up and down, but left to right. So because I want that to go into my becket. So I've raised these up and you can see that they're a bit higher now and it feels about right. And so I like that. And there's there are so many different opinions on this, whether you start it right here and then feed it through. For me, I like to just take this wire, and for me in this piano, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it and then just kind of pinch it right here. Give it a nice pinch. I want to be very careful and delicate with this wire. I don't want to create any groove, what would you say? I don't want to scar it up because I don't want to create any kind of weird false beats or anything like that. So I'm going to go ahead and feed this wire down in through here like this, being extra careful that it doesn't go boing, and then I accidentally put the one end on the string on the opposite pin. But this is my protocol, and then when I'm down at the hitch pin, I'm going to use a little clamp. I actually like the little baby clamps more because they're easier. I just couldn't find mine. And I'm going to make sure that this is attached to the hitch pin. So I'm going to see if I can move this, see if we can get a good view. Haha, that's pretty good. You all see it? So I'm simply, and again, I'm keeping an eye. Here's what we're working with. Geez, this is dirty. I'm just keeping an eye on making sure it's going in between everything. So what some people do is they'll get another string, by the way, and attach it to this so that they can pull it through. That's another thing that I've seen people do. I'm hoping I can just kind of feed it through to, and not have any issues. Questions about this so far, though? I know I'm kind of going through it. Like, no, this is easy. You're making it look very hard, but it's very easy, David.
It seems like the times that I've had to restring, I have to look at it 3 times to make sure I get to the right side of the.
Oh my gosh, it's so true, so true. So I pulled this up. I'm looking at it. I'm kind of moving these strings just to be sure. Yes, good. So now that I'm at this hitch pin, I'm pinching my. By the way, I actually don't like using the rubber gloves. I like using the work gloves better. So I've got my little clamp. I'm going to just be clamping this onto that hitch pin. And my goodness, I worked on pianos for years before somebody showed me that. And I was like, what? What have I been doing all my life? Why haven't I done this? I'm one that I like to thread the, at this point in the game, I don't know, some people are different, but I like to thread these through the bridge pins right here. I don't know why, I just always have done it. Jacob, do you do it right now, or do you wait till later on?
Yeah, I'll try to keep it in as long as I can. Yeah. I also clamp it. I tend to use something that's probably not recommended. But
what is it? Vice
needle nose.
Yeah, I've done that before too.
Yeah, I normally put a cloth. I have a really thin cloth or a cotton rag that I put around the hitch pin, and then I use the vice grips. That way you're not scarring up the metal of the hitch pin as much.
Mm-hmm.
I used to put leather to do that. That's
what do you mean, like leather?
Like buckskin.
Oh, like to just pad your clamp?
Yeah. Just so that it's not marring the hitch pin.
Yeah. So back to Jacob's views. Not Jacob, but back to Michael's point. This is probably the most difficult, well, I would say of the most difficult parts, and that is making sure, because you can see right here. Let me show you this. You can see right here how confusing this gets. That's, for me, the most difficult part of this whole thing, is getting it so that I am actually not crossed with my wire. And right now I can tell I am absolutely crossed with this wire. And I think it's in part because that stupid clamp that I have is just really not doing the job. And so what I'm going to do is just pull it tight. And if you all have another way of doing this that you're like, hey, actually, I learned this or I learned that, like speak up for the group, because there's got to be ways to delineate which is which. But I haven't found an easy, simple way of doing that.
If you make a coil on one pin and then run the wire through and then make the other coil and tie it
Ooh,
off,
I like that. Yeah.
that's how I do it. Then I don't need to worry about doing the tangling thing.
So I've run it through, and I know that this wire coincides to this pin right here. I take 4 fingers, and I think that that's different between people. I think that I've shooken some people's hands, and literally when I shake their hands, I even think like, man, you have massive hands, and you probably couldn't do this part of the job very easily with 4 fingers. You probably have to go down to 3. But I get 4 fingers. Some people do 3 as a guide, and then I just simply take it, and I cut it right here, keeping track of the excess string again, and I've done that right there. So again, I'm going to be putting this on here. And so the first thing I'm going to do is take it and make my becket. So everybody knows a becket is this right here, this bend. And so that's going to go inside the tuning pin. And tell me about what size you think that needs to be. Do we want it sticking out of the pin a lot? Do we want it sticking not at all? What are your thoughts? What's the answer?
Just a hair
a
outside.
tiny bit.
Yes. I have gone to so many pianos and they'll have had replaced strings, and it'll be like, it feels like an 1/8 inch popping out of this stupid thing. And I'm like, what in the world?
Yeah, because
Okay.
if you insert the wire, like since I use a coiler, if you insert it with it sticking slightly out, when you create that becket with my coiler, it just pulls out to almost flush. So you know it sinks back in just a hair. So, and I'm sure yours probably does as well with it being on the piano. That once you insert it, you do that first coil on the pin, it will sink in just a slight amount.
Yeah. And when I'm at this point, I'm just kind of carefully trying to get a couple of winds on it. And then I'm going to come back to it and I'm going to play around with it. But I just wanted to get it so that I've at least have this so it's cinched down a bit. And I'm going to come back to this. I'm going to do more manipulating of the coils, tightening in that becket. But I just wanted to get it so that it's at least at a point. And that's how I, do this point where I'm like, okay, it's at least got something. And now I'm going to go ahead and start moving on to the next thing. Now, this is a good time. Whoa. Like, what is that? This is a good time, by the way, to go and just double check that, because you can still, if you've misaligned the string, if you flipped them, this is the time where you can still fix that. Where you can't fix that is when you go on and tied it to the second one and it's just like all over the place. So this is the time now I'm going to just make sure that the string is on the correct tuning pin. And if it's not, I'll flip the string over so that it's going to the correct side. I like showing this kind of stuff on the actual piano. And I always debate like, well, should I just use the tuning or the jig? But I think you all need to see what this is really like. Our jobs would be so much easier if all we had to do was use that jig, and then we can just replace it that way.
Well, the jig is a useful tool for training, but you're right. You pretty much got to start doing it on some pianos and getting used to it, both from a grand and from an upright, because there are slight differences between the two.
And yes, you're right, Michael. And underneath the bass strings versus like what I'm doing right here.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Well, you saw my video or the photos of me trying to do the one on my full upright Thompson. Where I had to go underneath the bass strings. That was a bear.
Oh my gosh.
And that was my first one too.
Sometimes you'll do what I just did and you're like, oh, I thought the becket was the right size, but right away I can see I'm about 1 millimeter too, it's too thick. So I'm going to carefully snap that take out that little bit, making sure that it when I snap it, that it's not going to go onto onto the ground or anything. And it didn't. So just sometimes you're going to need to just cut it, do another cut. And that's totally cool. I'm doing the same thing. I'm just kind of getting it started with my finger right here, kind of pinching it down, being careful. I'm not pressing my finger against it. I'm kind of to the side of it because I don't want to accidentally slice my finger with the little bit of Beckett that's popping through. And I've done that. Jacob, I'm sure you've probably done that too, right? Or at some point.
Yeah, especially if I'm stringing a whole piano, there's no way I'm not stabbing myself at least twice.
So now this is that last point where I'm just going to make sure, I'm going to make doubly sure that I'm like, my strings are not threaded incorrectly. It's good. Again, this would, if I had a better clamp, this would have probably been more of a non-issue, but my clamp really was not great. So I'm just going to kind of tighten these coils up just a little bit more, kind of doing them evenly. I'm looking at both of them. I'm like, okay, there's definitely more room on this one to go ahead and add that, to add more coil. Michael is like the master at just kind of taking the time and just practicing these things. So Skylar, as you're getting used to doing this kind of stuff, I highly recommend doing what Michael's done and just like really set time aside to practice. And Michael, you can, what's your formula for that? Do you just like, okay, I'm going to go and practice this week? Because you have a rhythm to it.
So what you do is you watch YouTube videos. I sit here at my desk. I have my coiler. I have wire, and I practice creating coils on my coiler. Or the same thing with Hitch-pin loops. You just sit down and block out 15, 20 minutes and just practice your technique on just some spare wire. There's nothing exotic about it. It's just taking the time.
But right there, just that attention to like, okay, I'm going to master this slowly over this period of time. And honestly, that was so inspirational for me because I kind of I cut my teeth in a restoration facility where it was just, you just had access to do this all day long. And it's been a hard thing to be like, well, how do we teach people this? What do we do? And yours was so inspirational. Like, well, you just set time aside and just practice doing 50 of these.
Michael, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
On the coiler, because I've only done them with the tuning pin in. So you're making a coil on a tuning pin out, and then you're taking that coil off and putting it on a different tuning pin that's in. Is that correct?
Yeah, correct. Yeah. So, for example, here, I have my coiler. I'm going to create so this wire would be in the piano. So you're have the piano here. You have your solid tuning pin that's in the piano. You're creating the coil right above it. Mm-hmm. So you're going through, and you're just going to create your coil, and then you have your dummy pin, and you're going to take it off your dummy pin, and then you transfer it down to the regular pin.
So just really quick,
as you can to transfer it and keep the tension and and back in tight. Any technique to that?
You can see here. Let me get the. It's going to have a loop, so you're going to back the pin out, and as you put the Beckett back into the pin that's in the piano, this coil will tighten up. You just have to do a quarter turn, half turn, cinch the Beckett back in to make sure it stays seated. Do a few more turns, reseat it with your duckbill pliers. Reseat your Beckett multiple times. Use your coil lifter to seat the coils. It's time consuming, but you just take the time to go through that process.
Yeah, the biggest challenge for that probably is just making sure you're not scratching the pin as you put the Beckett back into the piano. So that's another thing that you have to keep track of versus what David's doing. That's what I have to do every time.
That's a really good point. And that scratching of the pin is so true. So just so you saw, I actually messed up, and I had the wires going correctly, but I had to move one of the wires because it was on the wrong side of the damper wire. So I had to loosen it up and slowly move it over correctly. Luckily, I was able to do that, but that happens. Just try to keep your cool when it happens. Hopefully, the owner isn't sitting there watching you. I've had that, but luckily most of the time they have no idea what you're doing. They're just glad that you're doing it. So I'm using my coil lifter, just kind of bringing up these coils. I again, still using my flathead screwdriver, and I just kind of slowly working it. At the very end, I'm going to use just some needle nose pliers and just kind of pull in that becket, just tighten it down. And then it's just kind of, for me, it's about finessing. So I'm just kind of loosening it up. I'm tightening it up. They make this, have you seen that, Jacob, that little piston thing that like lifts them up? Yo, what a boss. My gosh. That's a cool tool. Yeah, go ahead.
Show it to us, Jacob, again.
Yeah, let's see if I can switch it so you can see it. Hold on. There. You see that?
Got it. Yeah. Okay.
You want to explain what that does?
So this part right here, this is the part that goes underneath the coil. So you'd sit that, let's get a tuning pin. You'd sit that right underneath the coil like this. And then you'd use if you're pulling it up, then you're using the weight against the coil and pulling it up this way. I've also used it the other direction if I want to tap the coil down. It's nice to have.
Yeah. Usually, by the way, y'all, when I'm at this point, I usually have some kind of like a wooden dowel or some kind of a piece of brass, and I want to tap the strings down. I want to tap it down so that it's resting on the plate right here at the Hitch-pin. I want to make sure that that's nice. I want to make sure that these are seated right here, that the string, and so I'll tap, these different pressure points right here. And then I'll also make sure that the wire right here is spaced correctly and equally right there. And so all of these spots are prone, to stretching, and we want to eliminate that as much as possible. So I'll make sure to do that. And then when I'm done, like bringing it up to pitch, I use this. I usually take the rubber side and I'm pressing down on the string to stretch it. I don't like having a lot of tools, and I know they make a string stretcher tool. I just kind of do this, some kind of a rubber handled tool, and just press down on that string. So I'm going to hear. And that's how we do it in the piano. And you can do it more gracefully as you get used to it and you're not having to kind of do it on live. But that's essentially the process. So you're tightening up those coils, you're kind of finessing them. I'm tapping them down, making sure they're nice and tight, stretching that string out. If I'm coming to a piano and I know that they're like, hey, there's a string broken, I want you to replace the string and then tune it, I'll do the string replacement first, so that it has time to stretch, so that by the time I get to that point on the piano again in my tuning, I'm able to tighten it up again. Jacob, I feel like we need to do another class on the other technique.
Yeah, I'd love to.
Okay.
So David, after you set some tension on the strings that you've replaced, what do you do? Do you use a brass rod or a wooden dowel to help seat the strings on the bridge pins? What do you do for that side of it?
I usually use a wooden dowel, like a wooden shank. I don't know why, because I feel like I always lose the brass one, and so I'm like really sad whenever I lose it. So I'm like, I'm not sad if I ever lose the wooden dowel. So I usually use a wooden dowel. And it's just a light tapping. I was at the store once and they had this technician and she was just wailing. She was tapping all the strings on this brand new piano. And you would think that she was hammering in a 2x4. So it's a very light tap. So it's a very, very light. Just slightly seating that. Yes. Yes.
I've got a question. I know we're talking about treble strings, but for bass strings, what's your take on universal bass strings versus custom? Like I've heard mixed opinions on those. Like some people say, oh, every technician should carry universal bass strings. You can do them quick on the fly, and other people say no, they never sound the same. And I don't know what's your take on that,
Jacob?
I missed half of it. Sorry.
Yeah, universal bass strings, yay or nay?
Nay. Always.
They're stupid. Sorry. I don't like them. They never work just right. And at the end of the day, I feel like why didn't I just do it right? I could have sent this in, have it back to me within a couple weeks. We're using a new string manufacturer. I don't remember who it is, but we'll put it in the chat. And it's simple. We just have 4 measurements: core, winding, overall winding, and hitch to winding. Those 4 measurements. And I think we even did a class on that, Skylar. It's on the thing. I've tried it early on, and I'm like, there's got to be a way to make this work. I've never been able to make it work just right.
Okay, that's good to know. That was my leaning. I was leaning toward. It sounds like you should just make custom strings every time.
Yeah,
and I did that for
it's so easy. Yeah, it's much better, and it's easy. Even Shaft, you get those 4 measurements, and you can just email it to them, and they'll
yeah.
I've used Mapes twice, and both times I've had success with them. Just do the measurements. They have a little template that you fill out. You can just email them that form, or just give them a call and tell them the measurements, and they'll take it.
Yeah.
And they're pretty timely.
I did it through Howard, and it just came from Shaft, and that was before I had a Shaft account, and so I was like, just skip the middleman and just go straight to Shaft.
Yeah, totally. No, that's a great, and just so you know, everybody in their pricing on bass strings is going to be different. Keep in mind that when you go there, you have to think of your time as a service call. How many service calls can you do a day? Are they an hour block? Are they an hour and a half block? Are you going to do 4 15-minute blocks to make up for the one that you're missing by having to come back and do a touch up or this? So you have to think about it that way. And most business owners really struggle with pricing. It's usually the underpricing. And to my dad's credit, he really instilled that in me early on. Is like, David, you cannot undervalue what you're doing. And that is so true. And so you have to think of it that way. You're having to use up a slot. And so for us, if we're like, okay, yeah, we'll take the measurements, we'll take that. But if we're going to go and order it, and we're going to go ahead and bring back the bass string. So for us to go and do that, that's a time slot. That's a 1-hour appointment. And we're going to charge that plus the string.
What kind of margin do you add? So, let's say you get a $30 bass string from Mapes.
Mm-hmm.
How much margin are you putting on it for the pricing, or are you just putting that into your service call fee?
I've done it both ways. I've done it where it's just wrapped up in the service call fee. I'm less inclined to do that nowadays because I'm actually paying people to send in those measurements. Like that, it's a cost. And so I look at it like, okay, if that took us 15 minutes to go ahead and do that, plus then I'm going to say, okay, well, this is probably another 25% on top or 50% on top of the string, because the time is money. So if Stacy's ordering that and arranging all that, that's another $25. So a bass string, I think on average is $35 to $55. If I'm, and so
That's a good ballpark, yeah.
I have no problem charging an extra $25 for the time it takes to go get the measurements, orchestrate it, make sure it happens, make sure it gets here, and all that.
Yeah, because
It's
you're
not
also
a profitable
paying,
venture.
you're also potentially, you have the price of the string, but you could have also shipping costs. You got to
Oh,
cover,
yeah.
you got to cover that in the expense as well.
Yeah, I'm not into gouging at all, but I am into just paying for the time. And yeah, I mean, we pay our people well, and it costs more money, and that snuck up on me, to be honest with you. You know, as a single operator, it's like, oh, I'll just take care of it. But then when you start doing payroll every month, I'm like, geez, that's like 50 grand in payroll. And you have to figure this out. And every hour has to be accounted for. And that's stuff that we'll go into as you grow your businesses and you're like, hey, I'm ready to add another technician. What's the protocol? How should we pay? What are the different ideas? I have failed my way to this portion of success. It's not by any means wow, you did it. It's just so much failure. And I'll just pass that on to you. So you don't have to fail. Jacob, I think we need to do a string replacement. Maybe we do that either on Wednesday or Friday because I want them to see the coiling, the coiler.
Sure. Yeah.
I've got a question.
Yeah.
Let's see what I got.
Did you bend the Beckett in or out of the piano? Did you pre-bend it with pliers? I didn't see that part.
Yeah, I bent it in the piano. I bent it right as I was down at the pin.
Okay. So you put it inside the hole and then you twisted it.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I bent it. I pre-bent it and then I put it in the tuning pin. Okay. So I bent it outside of it. Yeah.
Okay.
I found that when I try to just put it in there and loop it around, that it's not a tight enough Beckett for me, and a lot of times it can slip out.
Yeah, that probably only works with coil makers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good question.
So David, how many string replacements do you think Artisan does in a 3 month to 6 month to a year time period? Any ideas?
It feels like it goes in waves, and I'm guessing we do. I wish Stacy was here because she gave you the number. I'm guessing we do, with all 4 locations, 100 strings a year. As far as bass strings, were we talking bass strings?
Just strings in general. It doesn't matter whether it's bass or not. But
Coburn, are you still there? How many string replacements do you think you'll do in a year? Just one tag.
5 to 10.
Okay.
Out of 750 to 1,000 appointments.
Yeah.
It's very rare.
Yeah, we don't have to do a lot. But I feel like we've done a lot of work on our technique. It's not a wong and snapping. Right. We're very dedicated to the technique.
Right. Yeah, I guess it's more dependent on the piano more than the technicians at this point for your team.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. No, and every string that gets broken, $500 comes out of their paycheck. So it's a fear. We like to use fear. COVID smile. No, we don't. I would say that strings and replacing strings are along my least favorite repairs for me. Give me voicing regulation any day.
And damper spoons, I tell you.
Oh, I'll do damper spoons. I like doing damper spoons. It's
me
weird.
Too. That's awesome.
Yeah, I
spoons are great. I'll take that any day.
Any day for me too. Yeah, that's one thing that I'm excited to work with people on site when we do trainings, because a lot of people go through this entire process where they take the action out and they have this little jiggy thing, and I'm like, no, we're gonna learn how to do it strictly, quickly inside the piano. You got 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and just go through the spoons. Yeah, I'm a big fan of spoons, and one of my mentors was like, no, you don't get to take it out. You can get it out and just kind of learn how the spoons work, but you're going to spend time just learning how to do it in the piano. You'll be much faster. He did the same thing with let off, especially with like Steinway let off. Just you do it in the piano right then. You're looking down. Yeah.
Put spoons on the list for August.
I think it makes more sense in the piano I think spoons definitely make sense in the piano just because they're digging into the felt, and they're not wearing evenly. So even if you get them all lined up outside of the
Yes.
piano, all the felt is worn differently.
That's so true. And the spring tension is different on those levers too, Cobra. And you're right about that. And that will affect it really. Solid.
Another string question. Do you charge the same for a splice as a regular string replacement?
A splice is going to take longer, maybe twice as long or even 3 times as long.
You think so?
I think splicing definitely takes a lot longer for me than replacing a
longer.
string.
Coburn, are you more likely to splice a bass string than you ever would any type of treble string or non-bass string?
I'll splice if I know using the old string is more preferable, just so it sounds the same as the others. But if it's way too old, then I'll put a new string in on a treble, and I'll try to splice the bass before trying to order a new one.
Mm-hmm.
Because if it's way too old, then it'll probably snap right at the splice anyway. But if it's not too old, then I'll try to splice just so that way it can sound the same as the others.
Cobra,
I'll replace the string every time over splicing. I'm not good at splicing. It stresses me out.
Cobra, would you say that the reason it takes twice as long is because you only splice on bass strings? What if it's a treble string? Is it the same time or is it still twice as long?
Same amount of time. It's just tying the knot, getting the bends takes more time than just pulling out the old string, throwing in the new wire.
I feel like I've seen so many plates destroyed with splices.
Yes.
So many times.
Yeah.
That's like a main reason at the beginning. I don't like it. It's easier. It's easier to just do a new string for one thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, in a pinch, if it's like in the middle of a concert and you got to keep that going, then you have to. But
yeah. The only time I've really run into problem with the pricing, Josiah, is when it's not talked about up front and there's a high probability of it, and also the out of tuneness that they think, oh, you've just replaced it, it should be good, and they're really put off the fact that it goes out of tune and that they have to have it muted, or they're like, no, I don't care, I don't like it muted. We're like, hey, well, it's going to go to tune. They're like, no, it'll be fine. And then 2 days later, they're like, what did you do? It sounds horrible. So, yeah, that happens.
What would you do if you had to replace like 3 or more strings? Would you still do a regular string price, or like would you add it up? Like I have a guy with 5 broken strings, and I got to go do it.
Yeah,
There's
so
actually 6 broken strings, but 5 in the treble.
yeah, it depends on where it's at in the piano for us, and we'll usually book out 1 or 2 hour service call and just charge that. So if it's like a 2 hour service call, we might charge $300 for that. We might charge $200 for that, depending on kind of where it's at in the piano, how long the technician thinks it's going to take. We will do that work after we've tuned the piano, just so that we know we're not going to break any more strings too.
Just don't try to touch up any more notes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it gets real expensive. So again, if 5 strings are broken in the bass, your hard cost could be upwards of $55 plus shipping per string. And so you might be into it $300 in just string costs right there. And so then your time, and it gets really hairy really quick. So that's why if I start breaking bass strings, if I break 2 bass strings, 1, I'm like, okay, let them know, yep, 1 broke. If 2, then I'm like, okay, we may need to either just tune the piano to itself, or we may need to look into getting a different piano, or if you wanted to do some major restoration work, putting on new strings. That's usually when I'm having that talk, which is not fun.
How much does
Hey, David.
a string go for these days?
Say it again.
How much does a full restring go for these days?
I can tell you what we charged. And so we had a full restoration facility. We would do about 50 pianos a year. So we were not tiny, but not big. And so we were charging for a restring on a grand about, I think it was like $6,000. And so that would include, you know, the moving, and that would include and the bass strings, the treble strings, new pins, plate felt, you know, plate bushings if needed, and a bunch of tunings and all that stuff. Then it got double the price if we're starting to do soundboard work or replacing the pin block and all that jazz. So it gets really expensive. And so I would say that 95% of the pianos were not worth the sticker price of what they were spending on it, but it was worth it to them, and they loved the piano. So they would spend $20,000 to $40,000 on their uprights or grand. You know, I think their ticket price for the upright restoration was $15,000 to $25,000, and the grand was $25,000 to $40,000, depending on what they wanted. By the way, those are listening to like, wow, I should get into the restoration field. That's a private another conversation, and I can really help navigate that because it is probably one of the funnest things I've ever done in my career is owning a restoration facility. Absolutely one of the most stressful. I did not have gray hair before I did the restoration. So absolutely a very stressful venture. Very, very difficult to do it.
Hey, David. So at this point, is there anything that you're going to do to level the pins, or is it good now that you've kind of done that? It's
good. And so
nice.
I've found that when I do that 3 turns, and it's a little bit less than 3 turns, by the way, I'm looking down at it. I can't tell which one it is. And I love that because I don't like tapping. It scares me. I don't know why. I think like a plate's going to explode. That's not going to happen. I know that's not going to happen, but the fear is always there.
I mean, technically they're supposed to, I mean, there is a reason why we put anchors when you're tapping down on the pin block. Yeah. So there could be something, right?
So, and that's a good point, Jacob. I was curious because you did mention tapping those tuning pins. Do you go ahead and remove the action and set your pin block brace every time?
I should, but no, I don't.
So just so everybody knows, you know, when we're tapping in those tuning pins, we don't want to what they call blow out the pin block. And that is, we want to secure that pin block by removing the action. And there's this little jig that kind of tightens up so that it presses tension on the bottom side of the pin block so that when you're tapping these pins down, you don't hurt anything.
I think they jack in the box too, right?
I've seen people do stuff like that in a pinch. I'm actually a fan of that because I like fewer tools the better for me. You know, that's a big bulky one, Jacob. You know, it's just like to have in your car.
I mean, it's anecdote, right? It's never been a problem for me, but when it's a problem, it's a problem. So So take that.
I'm not sure if it's from a previous technician, but I have seen the bottom of a grand pin block delaminated, like the bottom 3 layers of wood pushed down and cracked on certain pins.
Yeah, I came across one rebuild where they didn't drill the pinholes all the way through. And so if we were to tap them, we would potentially run into that. And so to this day, I don't know what happened. I don't know why they did that. They didn't drill it all the way through. So if we were to tap those down, it would bottom out. Just not great. Jake and I will discuss. We might just go on Wednesday and do the Instacoiler. I don't know if it's called that. We might do that on Wednesday and then move the aural tuning stuff to Friday because I think it's nice to, while this is fresh, we're doing strings and we can kind of just play around with that. And you guys can just decide what you guys want to do. And it might be just case by case basis. So with that, I'll see you on Wednesday.
Thanks.
Cheers, all.
Bye.